Warning.
You are now tuned in to 7 Mile Radio.
Production.
7 Mile Radio.
Warning.
Peace, and divine love. You are tapped in Talk Radio with your co-host, me, Osa. We also have Tanisha.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Champ.
What's up? Peace.
And of course, we got Mark in the building too.
What's the word, everybody?
It's
What's
still
happening?
Leo Caesar.
Yes, it is.
Shout out to you.
Yes, it is.
So we have a special guest in the house today.
It's gotta be my phone.
Yeah, cut y'all volumes down, please. We have a special guest. We have Sunshine. Hey, Sunshine. Hey. So today's topic is about grief and loss. So as we know, with grief, it is the emotion of feeling a departure, a loss. Sometimes with death, sometimes with relationships. We grieve. We grieve that loss. The connection that we felt with something is no longer. So that emotion comes up where we release emotions, and you may feel sad. Some people feel angry with grief. I think I just want to have Arlisha, Sunshine, I'm sorry, come on in and talk about grief. Yes, love, what can you share
That
us?
was interesting. You said grief with relationships, but I think grief doesn't just touch with the loss of life and the loss of relationships, but it's the loss of everything. You grieve sometimes the loss of your old self as you learn to heal or you transform. Sometimes even in marriages, you've been with someone 20, 30 years, everybody grows. So maybe the person you married, they're changing, and it's new, it's an adjustment, and you can grieve the loss of the old person, but it's also another side to it of being able to embrace it and seeing grief as a happy side, which is another thing that I think we don't look at. Yes, grief is like growth. It's hard, it's an adjustment, but grief can also be happy, even with the loss of life, whether it's the loss of someone else or the loss of your own life. And so I say that based on my own experience of losing my mother last year. So I was the only child, and my mother got sick in 2021. I noticed in 2020, and I said something to her because I kept noticing she would cough in her sleep. And when she get up, I was like, "Ma, you was coughing last night." She like, "No, I wasn't coughing." Yeah, and so that was like a red flag for me because you don't cough in your sleep and not know it. Generally if you cough, you got the flu or something, like your body doesn't necessarily just cough. So the following year, I'm like, we have the same doctor. And we went to the doctors, and I remember her saying, "You okay?" She like, "Yeah." Me, I bust in the room. She lying. She been coughing in the sleep. She ain't supposed to be doing that. He like, "Yeah, why you ain't say nothing about that?" She like, "Oh, because I didn't think it was no big deal." So I say, "Well, why don't you send her for a CAT scan?" So he sends her for the CAT scan. We get the CAT scan back, and around that time, my mother was going out of town. So when I got the CAT scan, I noticed that it said she had 7 tumors. 4 of them were over 3 centimeters. Instant red flag. Generally, that's like a sign of something cancerous. But I don't say anything. She goes on her trip. She comes home. She says, "Yeah, my best friend said I was coughing in my sleep." I'm like, "Yeah, let's go get a special appointment." So we get to the doctors in March. We get to the heart and vascular doctor. Now I'm sitting here this morning confused because why are we here? Heart and vascular ain't got nothing to do with no coughing. But I say, okay, she don't really understand. And I didn't explain to her what I seen in the CAT scan. So we get to the back. They do their little usual, the medical assistants, they do their question and answering. And I keep interjecting. So the lady like, you really on point. I'm like, yeah, because I got another reason I'm here. So the doctor comes in and he tells her, because, backtrack, my mother had a bypass and a triple bypass before the age of 40. So that would have been her reason, for going to the heart and vascular, because she wanted to start there because of her previous history. So when he, comes in, the doctor comes in, he gets to talk, and I say, hey, a CAT scan. I brought a CAT scan. I said, I need you to look at this CAT scan. So he look at it, and he said, oh, I said, I know a lot. I said, so what are we going to do to address that? I said, I'm here for all the tests for her heart. I need you to address that. So he turns to the medical assistant and say, hey, I need an emergency appointment with Dr. Sabani at Carmanis. Now my mother looked nervous. I look at him like, now why would you say that out loud? I say, hey, Mom, it's okay. It's emergency because he just wants to take care of you. She said, okay, yeah. So April the 14th, fast forward, they didn't do a test. Her birthday's April the 13th. April the 14th, they tell her you got stage 4 lung cancer. So she first she said, I don't want to do the chemo. I want to do everything natural. So we go back and forth. Someone convinced her, to do the chemo. And so she started, and my mother did a great fight. No, never was sick. They did some things where they drilled some holes in her head. They did all type of stuff trying to fight. She eventually lost her life last year, January 26th. I took care of my mother January 26th. Well,
My mother's birthday.
yeah. So January 25th. Now, all during hospice, I had never gave my mother any Hadol. I gave her morphine a couple of times, but never Hadol, because, I do understand, what I realized then is, when you're taking care of people and they're going through the transition, a lot of times we are not prepared for when they start talking to what we perceive they're having hallucinations. But what I perceived was she was really talking to, spirits that had passed on. And I've had my own connection with death. So I remember sitting by her bedside one night, and my mother was laying on her back and she was rocking up and down. And I know for a fact I heard my grandmother say, because what made me go back there in the first place was that I heard her just kept talking. So I'm like, I'm going to go sit back there because I want to hear. So my grandma said, turn her over. I sat there and paused, because I know I'm tripping. She said, turn her over. So I get up, I walk around the bed, I turn my mother on her right side, and I readjust her. By the time I walked back around and sat down, my mother said, I knew you would take care of it. Now, I could do nothing but bust out laughing. I said, okay, Grandma, I hear you. Take care of your baby. But the night before she passed, there was a different response. And it wasn't until the morning that she passed that I realized my mother had seen death. And she called out. It was a cry I had never heard. So I jump up, because I used to sleep in her front room in a recliner. So I jump up, I run back there. And she's looking just so afraid, and she's reaching for me. And in my mind, I don't know why I thought to get the hat off, but I'm like, oh. And I had already known that the time was coming, because I had, my mother had a special request, so I had already cut her visits that Sunday. And this was that Wednesday morning, Tuesday going into Wednesday. And I gave her the hat off, and it was like, it still didn't settle her.
What is Hadol?
Hadol is like a
It's similar to morphine?
It's stronger than morphine. So if you ever in the hospital or something, you hear somebody, one of them patients, psych patients, and they gonna shoot them with some Hadol, put you down.
It's a sedative.
Yeah, it's a sedative. It's gonna put you down. You gonna be. But the thing of it is it seemed like once I hit her with the Hadol, I guess she said she ain't comprehending, and it just seemed like by the time I got to the front, all hell broke loose, because I just heard rambling through the house. There was a computer that sat in the front. The computer hit the floor. It just doom, doom, doom. So I just got in the recliner and just put the blanket over my head. At some point, I nodded off, and I woke up at 7:30 in the morning to the blinds going boom. And I jumped up, and one of the blinds I fell out. So I sat there for a minute. I got up and I went back, and it was like at that time when I went back there, it was like she was kind of
Peace.
At peace. She was chilling. She wasn't gone, but she was. But then I got the specialist, and I started calling everybody on the specialist. And her best friend was like, I kind of knew it was time. She said, because I had already told my job I had to leave. So we all came over. They got there about noon, and I kept, smelling her passing gas and stuff. So about 2:42, I walked out the room, went and got a rag. I walked in, I stood over, and she just said, and that was it.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
And I said, her response, she said, check her. I said, what? She said, check her. So I put my ear on her chest, touch her.
But did they have machines?
No, I mean, I know. My
They
mother,
had a machine
she was
back
at
then?
home. No.
She's at home.
Nope. They will come every now and then and check her blood pressure. So I have a background in
Medical.
life nursing. So
Yeah.
therefore, she was in good hands. It was no need for hospice to be full hands on. I was able to toilet her, take care of her. I was able to provide everything she needed. Even when it got to the point where it was hard for her to swallow, I was still able to give her medications. I knew exactly what to do for my mom.
Right.
So she took her last breath, and it was just like my mother. So her wishes was no funeral, no memorial. She wanted to be cremated. I did ask her if I could have a memorial. She said that's for you, but she didn't. She asked for her ashes not to be taken to the memorial. There was a special list of people who could see her after the cutoff date, which I gave of that
Did
Sunday.
she explain why?
Well, so my mother was a very, very hard working woman. So, my mother left, so I could have probably shut the city down and gave her the best home going. She said, money is for the living and material things, you can't take it with you.
That
She
part,
said, it's
yeah.
stuff. She said, it's stuff. She said, and once I leave here, no one cares about my stuff.
Yep.
So she said, and then on top of that, she said, I don't want any fakeness. She said, if you loved me and you fucked with me, you'd have fucked with me before
While I was
then.
here,
Right.
So
How old was
all
your
that-
mother?
She died at 66 years old, which she
Young.
was so over. She like, I don't want to die at 66. And I kept trying to explain to her it's not a bad thing, because she was still I kept trying to get her to understand 666 is not a bad thing. But she just like, I don't want to die at 66. But unfortunately, she did die at 66, right before her 67th birthday. And but she also she left a long list, and it caused a lot of issues because I had it wrote up with an attorney when she was still in her right mind, her living will and her will in
And people
death.
still try to challenge it.
And they did, because her thing
That's the living.
was not only was it a cutoff date and only so many people could see her, it was the whole thing with the funeral. My mother was, but she was adamant about those things, like adamant. So
Like,
And she knew,
like-
she knew the drama that could possibly.
It's like you really have to take a video of this person actually speaking for other people
to believe that what you're
or
saying
take
is-
the essence of what he actually meant or say, because they'll read and they'll take it in their own perspective.
well, see, unfortunately, there's part of it that they didn't know, and I'm not even sure if my family will see this. But she has a sister, and so her older sister had an issue, and she told everybody how she showed up January the 27th to see my mother, and I didn't let her in the house. But notice I said my mother died January 26th. So the issue was my mother said, when I die, I need you to wait 2 days before you tell the family. Why? I don't know.
Right.
But guess what? I just recently told my uncle this year, I said, I'm sure you'll be playing January 28th as your sister's demise date.
I think that was to protect you and give you that day.
My space.
Yeah.
But even though her sister showed up the 27th, beating on the door and cutting the food, and I'm thinking like, ma'am, if I let you in here, you probably gonna pass out, because she not here. She at
was you-
OPAS.
but the thing, was you cutting a fool up to a sister before the days of her pass?
They had their own issues, and things happened that they were going through, because my grandmother had passed some years before, and they were going through their own things. But those were things that I used to even ask them, like, especially after my grandmother died, because my grandfather died first. Well, now she gone, why y'all didn't ask these questions as siblings to, and I'm an only child, so I guess that may be easy for me to say, but and then I used to always tell them, well, you grown now, because all that you 18 and you grown, well, the same thing. And I can't say to put your trauma on the back hand, but at the end of the day, you drinking poison, waiting on the other one to die. So if y'all sisters and brothers, either you're going to get past it and figure it out or not. But again, that's me speaking because I'm an only child. I don't have siblings by my mother. My father has other kids, but growing up in a house with siblings obviously is different.
Did she? How many siblings she have?
My grandparents had 9 kids.
No. Oh, 9 kids.
So 9 including her.
Where was she at on the ladder?
She would be the second oldest girl.
So then all the siblings, they want to show their importance of who they was in your mother's life.
And so it was the one. So because of the life insurance policy that was left for me, which I knew was going to be an issue, and unfortunately, I have some people who didn't know. It's like, well, why would you tell people? I said, well, unfortunately, I didn't tell people. That was something my mother had been telling people because I had a couple of cousins like, your mama had been saying like if something happened to you, it was gonna be straight. But my thing is, I didn't know, and I'll just say this: if I could give all that back for my mother, I give it back 1,000,000 times over. But nonetheless, the policy that was left, that was an issue, and I was told I didn't deserve it, and so
you didn't deserve it. You don't deserve it.
And so my response was, well, whoever can go down there and get a death certificate should put. And then my other response was, let's spell mommy. We all spell it MOMMY. Now you take those last 2 letters and put it in front of those first 3. What it say? My mom.
Yep.
She belonged to me, love. And when I say break bread with her, I'm the one that was in her stomach. I'm her only child. Ain't nobody broke bread with her like I did. She belonged to me. I took care of her, and if you feel like you can do something about it, have at it, sis. And the only hurtful thing is, I would have done anything for my aunt. She just flipped, and it was hurtful because too she kept doing things and kept hitting Facebook with it, and I kept texting her like, you 70-some years old and you do realize that everybody on your page is really not with you, sis. So everything you're saying, they're screenshotting it. And I had to start telling people, stop sending it. Because like I told her, at the end of the day, when my mother left her, I had this fairy tale in my head that you were the person that I was going, because there was a time that I was really close with this particular aunt, like really close.
Man,
and so but guess what? That was another death. See, so when I lost my mother, I didn't have to just grieve the deaths of the loss of my mother. I had to grieve the loss of my elders, and then the change of the relationships, because there's some of them that I may even still deal with, but then I still got to look at you with a little side eye. But the thing of it is I understand moving with compassion, grace. I understand your own trauma, but understand that I had to grieve that. It wasn't just I lost my mother. I almost lost every elder attached with her. And then you have the one elder going around and spitting venom with other elders, like extended cousins and everything else. And my thing is, you have some cousins who still, my mother's cousins who still reach out to me, and you have some that I'm sure act funny. And the only thing I feel for them is, baby, if you missed out on the best relationship based on something somebody else told you, so you don't get to get some of me any.
You said something earlier that was prevalent, that y'all lost your grandmother. That's your auntie's mother.
Yes.
So respectfully, you lost your mother,
and you should know how it feels.
So you should have insight what I'm going through. That that conversation alone, we can sit there and talk about everything underneath the sun. Let's talk about how you lost your mother and what I'm going through, and you're not showing no empathy, no sympathy, no consideration what I'm going through. That was your sibling. Granted, y'all came up, but like you said, I came out my mother's wounds. That supersedes anything of y'all sitting there growing up, because you got these extensions and tentacles that goes all this to it. I'm off my mama's umbilical cord.
So she'll have an excuse, because unfortunately I've never growing up always frowned upon my friends who jumped on. But see, when my grandmother passed, me and her had a physical altercation. So she may say that I wasn't supporting, but I was and being intoxicated is an excuse. But if I tell you more than one time to keep walking up on me, and you know how I am, at some point, sis, you swung first, you just swing a little slower. And I thought we had got past that, but even that was an issue.
So harbor on things for the longest.
I mean, and I had a cousin just the other day like, well, you wouldn't want nothing bad. I said, no, I would never want nothing, because I don't speak to her daughter either. I said, no, because she's still somebody's grandmother. Her daughter got kids that ain't grown. I said, I would never. I said, but you have to learn that now, losing my mother did show me to set different type of boundaries, especially when people start tripping about the money and stuff. I said, so I'm learning to love them across the street. Just because I love you, don't mean I mean the worst for you. But guess what?
distance.
I don't have nothing to say about you.
Right.
I don't. Guess what? Because what people fail to realize is my 24 hours, 7 days a week go on, and that's the other thing about grieving. When people lose people in that first week or two, people there, but that's not when you need them. Because guess what? It's the wee hours. It's the moments when I'd have been riding down the street and something exciting happened.
Not
I
the wee
pick
hours,
up
but the wee hours.
Yes.
W-E hours.
Okay, because them
We
wee
need y'all
hours,
the most.
it could be 3 in the afternoon.
We need you
and,
the most.
And something exciting happened, and I pick up the phone and say, "Oh, I finna call my mom." Oh no, we ain't finna do that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I had looked at grief and looked at the stages of grief, and kind of wanted to touch on those. Of course, there's 5 stages of grief. Some people say it's 7, but even the 7 is just entails the 5, with the first being initial, like a shock and a disbelief. And then you go through a phase of anger, denial, and you isolate yourself. And of course, you pass through depression. And then I have here where it says that there's a stage of bargaining when you go through a period of woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like if I coulda did this and woulda did that, maybe things would be different. And then you finally get to the whole readjustment to your life, a new life, and acceptance to that. So I want to know, how did you pass through those stages, even with the conflict you were facing?
Well, see, the first one is the shock and disbelief. Got to kind of take it out, because the one thing I respected is now, when I lost my mother, I had about 5, 6 friends who lost their mother and father at the same time. And the difference is, I think for me, is the shock and disbelief was kind of taken out of it, because
community.
And not even the community. When they told me in November that she got 3 weeks to a month to live, in that moment, it took the shock and the disbelief out, because I have to. One thing that I always tell people is, the only thing you guaranteed in life is death. You ain't guaranteed to have no kids. You ain't guaranteed to be rich. You're guaranteed nothing when you come here.
Change and death is the 2 guarantees.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go with change and death.
Change and death.
But so therefore, once they told me that, and then I guess me knowing and seeing and understanding, I had no choice but to come into terms with it. So when it happened, I wasn't shocked and I wasn't in disbelief.
Did you have a stage of anger?
I have it sometimes.
I mean, at the time, like, did you have? Because sometimes, and I don't want to. Do you like you could have been going through a stage of anger, which perpetuated a negative exchange with other people, right? So I'm asking you, did you have a stage of anger that you can acknowledge at this time that maybe you didn't acknowledge at that time?
You want me to tell you what I had? What I found was that when people found out my mother had passed, they did things, and when I responded, that would be the excuse. Now, I'm gonna take it back, because with the disbelief, there are times when I be like, I can't believe I gotta go through life without my mother, because like even I just became a grandmother, and I'm like, that's different. But initially, I wasn't in disbelief. But far as anger, no, I don't feel like I was necessarily angry with. Do I have a moment? I can be. I don't think I did.
So you didn't grow angry with the people, like with the people around you, because of your ideas,
my mother.
And
my mother
experiencing what you saw your mom experience.
On the flip side, that was the other thing. My mother, she swore me to secrecy, so that's the other thing. I didn't get to tell my family or anyone that my mother was sick until they told me she had 3 weeks to a month to live. So nobody even knew my mother was sick. So my close knit support, like Saranga, it was only a few people knew. So I couldn't get angry at them because I needed them, and I'm already very personal. So no, I didn't have anybody to get angry with, because the people that I had close to me was like they was going to bat for me.
Yeah. Right.
And in that time I had Chrysler was down for the chip thing. When they went back to work, I was able to return. I was fired. I owned a home and 2 other properties at that time. I had a truck note. I was in debt out the kazoo.
Out the wazoo.
Listen.
Then that comes into depression. And what happened with that? Because I'd be so depressed at that point.
Hey,
wait a minute.
do you think that your mom knew that she was sick before you found out?
No,
Because you said the CAT scan showed tumors.
But then she
she
never,
didn't share the
she didn't
information.
know. When the paperwork came, she just set it down and she gave it to me. She didn't even know what it was. See, we have the same doctor, and we have a really close relationship with my doctor,
Right, yeah.
and I'm really so
She
even
she wasn't aware of the CAT scans.
not
of the
until
tumor.
and then
Until the doctor said it, yeah,
no,
right
he
there.
said something about doctor's body, and then I explained to her, and I'm like, Mama, you have tumors. I'm like, one is 3.4 centimeters, one was 7.8 centimeters. I'm like, Ma, anything over 3 centimeters is generally a red flag for cancer.
Right.
And she was like, oh, and I was like, and I didn't want to tell you because I wanted to wait until we got a professional opinion before I made you nervous and alarmed you.
So
She wasn't aware.
When you told her, what was her reaction?
Initially, my mother's always the one to kind of internalize things. So my mother was an Aries, and my mother was a tower of strength. Like, so her initial thing was to get quiet and internalize it. So she didn't say
telling you
anything
that.
initially. She just, I think her next thing was like, well, you want to go get something to eat? That was kind of her thing. And so she like, well, we gonna make an appointment with her. And then, cause her next thing we got home, like the champ come out like, well, we gonna make an appointment with the doctor, and we straight. I'm gonna beat this, and I'm like, yeah, you got this, girl. I'm in this with you, ma. And
She internalized it. Did you internalize her strength?
yeah, it's just I always be like, even now that she's gone, I be like, man, when I be talking to her, I be like, girl, you left some big shoes, because I didn't think, and I'm still learning to be as strong as my mother, because I'm learning. I'm getting there.
But how you sit there and took it right, how she took it right, you gonna look how she took it,
I-
and now how you taking it. Is it the same strength that she took it?
Yeah, because in my mind, if she feel like she can beat it, is mind over matter, and whatever you
If
tell
you
your
don't got a
body,
mind, it don't matter.
and then if you gonna tell your body and we gonna get down in this thing and kick his ass, then I'm with you, mama, because people do go into remission. And so in my mind, I hadn't did my research on lung cancer. I did go do my research, and I just was like, damn, stage 4, and I'm like, but it can happen. I'm like, I'm not gonna never. So I prayed. I
Kept the faith.
kept the faith.
And so did you have a phase of depression, and what was that like? Because some people don't make it out past that stage, or it lasts for a long period of they get stuck in the complicated grief disorder at that stage where that sorrow lasts beyond 12 months kind of thing, like you stuck in this depression.
So the depression I probably went through. See, that's the weird thing. I probably should have did a definition on depression, because I have a hard time accepting that word. So
That's beautiful.
I'm with you
That's
on that
beautiful.
one.
So
That's beautiful.
therefore, if what they would say would be some form of depression,
Inclination.
I went through it as we were going through it. But now, no, I have moments like, and last year I should tell people, I give myself 5 minutes. So if I need 5 minutes to cry, scream, I'm gonna give myself that 5 minutes, and then I'll be like, okay, because guess what? You know what your mama says. Put some tears, put it in your pocket. The world don't give a fuck about your feelings.
What's your sign?
Suck it up. I'm a Cancer.
I'm a Cancer too.
And my mother would tell me, suck your feelings up, put them bitches in your pocket. The world don't give a fuck about your feelings. And now that I'm learning that I have to stand on my own 2 feet, because my daughter, she has 2 godmothers. She has a godmother named Dorothea Lewis. And when I was younger, Dorothea used to be like, you ain't never grown to your parents. Both your parents gone. I used to be like, girl, I'm grown.
Oh my
But-
God! I can.
Okay.
Oh my God!
Man, that's the truth right there.
Tell you something. As a Cancer, I empathize with you so much, because I know how we feel about our moms,
What
But
about
at
your
the
dads?
same time, I'm speaking as a Cancer, and at the same time, I know how stoic we are in situations, and sometimes we don't, because we are emotional people and we are accustomed to emotion. We don't always we look at it as a philosophical kind of way. We don't feel it, we just know it. Like, this is the emotion, I know what it is, and I don't feel it, but I know it.
No, it
And
exists. It's
yeah,
there.
I know it, and it's legitimate, and I feel it. I know it, so I'm moving past that, and we never give ourselves a chance to feel the emotions. So, did you give your chance of self to feel emotional about this situation?
Yeah, like even after they carried her out, I sat on the phone, and I had a funeral. Her and my friend, my other
Yeah,
friend,
we like
they
rituals.
they would,
We
they
gonna
wouldn't,
call our
they
friends.
wouldn't participate because at the end I was trying to play Going Up Yonder. They like, bro, we're not doing this with you. Like what? Like that's
I'm trying to be sad.
I'm like, that's the
here.
end of the funeral. Like I got my candle lit. Listen, it's
That's
a
the
vibe. Like,
yonder, like this is a vibe.
but no, I gave myself time to sit in those emotions because I had a prayer room, a whole room, and there's plenty of times I definitely I sit there. I would turn on some of my mother's favorite gospel songs, the Leandria, what's her name, Leandria. Oh man, and y'all,
I got the face
I don't know.
because
I
I
don't
know
know.
what you're talking
I
about.
should know, but I don't
Yeah.
know contemporary gospel.
You lost in the sauce.
I don't even know going up
I know
yonder.
the face. I ain't good remembering all names because they know when I be partying. Chip just doing some gospel. What is wrong with him? Man, we need God wherever we go.
So Leandria Johnson.
Yeah.
So that was one of my mother better days, and then she had those would be songs she would, and so there's times when I'd be at home and I may feel like I'm going through the fire. I light my candles, I sit at my altar, and yes, I would cry, I would sing, I would pray, I would rock, I do
You would
whatever I
commune.
needed to do because I mean that's my comfort zone. That's the purpose in that room. To where I have a son. He'll be 6 this month, and Leo, last day of Leo season. Oh, okay. And he even got to where I come in. What you doing? He like, oh, I'm sitting at the altar, I'm praying. Like, oh, okay. It became a vibe. Like, even I realized when I was moving, the guys was coming to help me, and I hadn't been home. And I went to pick up, it was another urn, not my mother's urn, of someone else's. And it was like, as soon as I picked up the urn, it was like stuff started flying off the altar. The young boy jumped back, and he told the guy, he's like, oh, no, we ain't going there. Hey, when I say took me out, I said, yeah, baby. I just closed the door. I said, don't worry about it. I'll come back and pack this room by myself. I'm like, there's a lot going on in that room.
I think you just said a whole lot, right? I mean, really, no, and not a whole lot, but in terms of getting over heartbreak, and processing heartbreak, processing grief, processing loss. It is a very deliberate, conscious action and behaviors, and you have to really want to do that, and almost in honor of that person. Is people think that as long as I'm suffering, I'm honoring that person, but actually, as long as you're not honoring that person and suffering, so you have an altar? Do you commune with your mom as an ancestor?
Yes.
Do you see her with other ancestors?
Yes, so my altar when it, because I just moved, but my altar has my mother as the head. Prior to her, it was my grandmother was the head. My mother's the head. Then there's my grandmother, my daughter's adopted father, her real father, my grandfather, my aunt, and Lord, I don't even have no deceased aunts. I'm petty, but
Forgive
my
us, Father. Forgive us.
yes, my uncle and I have a cousin, and the reason though is when I first started doing my altar, my uncle, I was originally gonna put my grandmother and my cousin on my altar. She was the first cousin I had ever lost, and then I was going to put just that's all I knew at the moment. But then as I was shopping, her father basically showed up. So I went to a thrift store, and I was trying to hurry up because I had been door dashing. And I was like, well, I'm going to just stop and I'm going to go to this thrift store. And my other friend, Gabby, was like, yeah. She was like, well, I've seen you coupon for this place. She was like, but I think they closed and you probably ain't going to make it there. So I said, well, I want to go to this other thrift store. But when I pulled it up, it happened to be the same place, just a different location. So I had like 30 minutes. I go grabbing stuff, frames and things I want, little things. The last thing I seen was this red bell. And I'm like, I don't even like red. But I'm like, I want a bell. And I'm like, can I put a bell on my altar? She like, you put anything you want. So I get in line though, and when I get in line, I turn it around and it has a Christmas bird on it, and you know the little bird with the little berries in its mouth, and it had a letter L on it, and it had the year 85. So now I'm like, first of all, I was born in 83, and my name don't start with no L. But then I stop and so I sit the bell down, but the spirit like pick it back up. Why? But then I stopped and I tell my friend Gabby, I said, I think something happened in my family in 85. So I called my mother and I said, Mom, what happened in Christmas of '85? And just as I asked her, I answered, I said, oh, is that the year Uncle Johnny died? She said, yeah. So I said, okay. So my cousin that I was putting on my altar name is LaShawn. My Uncle Johnny is her father. That's his only child, and he died Christmas of '85.
So he called out for
I
you.
said, okay, Uncle Johnny
That's
said
so
put him on the altar. So that's how I figured out that he was supposed to be on my altar. And it's crazy because he died of a double aneurysm, and she turned around and died of a double aneurysm as well. So that, but yeah, like my altar, yes, I spend a lot of time on my altar. I love my altar. I think it's very necessary. I just had a young lady, and it's just me today learning that I need to be disciplined. But I realized that not just with her, but there's like 2 other guys on my timeline that I feel like are altar for a grief of loss of loved ones is kind of now would be essential, because I seen you did your 7 stages, and I did the 7 stages, but I also did what's called the 4 stages of griefs. It's called the wandering task of mourning. So the one of them, it says to find an enduring connection with this deceased in the midst of embarking on a new life. That they just told
that
you
spiritual
to
aspect.
make an altar, because that's what I heard. I don't know what y'all heard. Say y'all agree. No.
You know, those is action steps. I love that. What else you have?
So it started with task 1, to accept the reality of the loss. Task 2, to process the pain of the loss. Task 3, to adjust to the world without the deceased. And task 4 is to find the enduring connection with this deceased in the midst of embarking on a new life.
So how you gonna stay connected?
And that's why I said, and because the young lady and I was sick earlier, but I'm gonna make it up to her, because I even said to my friend today, instead of me trying to make time to take her, maybe I'll just make it, because I do have a business I want to start. So it might be the spirit keep telling me to go with my business.
Let's talk about that business.
Yeah. Yeah, let's give it some time. What's about the business? You gonna create altars?
It's called Good Grief, a Good Grief box. And you know, people like, good grief. And it's funny because I looked it up, and it says good grief is supposed to be an explanation of irritation, frustration, or surprise. And in my mind, good grief, because I would like to personalize them and everything else, but grief for me, it can be good grief. And if I can be allowed, even for, because I'm like, if it blows up, it'll be sometimes maybe hard to do it on a personal level. But if I could just start that there are so many people on a personal level that, like, there's a gentleman that lost his daughter, and I feel like if I could just get a couple things, like her favorite things, I know when her birthday is, I can take those things and make a good grief box and present it, and that'll give him another way of outlet, another way to, because now when he missing his baby, and then she has a little sister, they can sit there, they can feed the altar. What's her favorite foods? What's her favorite? And my thing is, some people may look at it as voodoo, whatever. And my thing is, I have Creole in me, but with any religion, there's good and bad, and baby, voodoo ain't gonna take you unless you take it. So at the end of the day,
It's a term that umbrellas all that. It's emotional intelligence.
And I'm a Cancer.
When you're emotional, when you're emotional intelligence, you know how to. You know how to. You're entitled to your intelligence. I'm sorry. You're entitled to your emotions, right? We're all entitled to our emotions. It's how we react to them. That's emotional intelligence. It's how we react to them. Because how you react to your emotions is what's going to dictate your quality of life. Because everything that we go through, we deal with emotions. If we have a relationship with our siblings, with our families, with our co-workers, with associates in business, everything, we deal with emotions. We make decisions based on emotions. These decisions is going to make me feel good. It's going to make me feel pride in myself. It's going to stroke my ego. A whole umbrella of what emotion does to us when we make our decisions, right? So when we sitting there talking about grief, because you had 5 steps, you had 7 steps, right? We're talking about how are we going to adjust to our emotions.
Readjust your life.
You know, I wouldn't even say readjust. I would just say to adjust. You know what I'm saying? To readjust is the back pedal to go forward, but I'm not about to live in the past. I'm about to live in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hear of the emotions and what's going on right now and how I'm going to move forward. You know what I'm saying? How I'm going to react to these emotions. You know, if a person that was close to me passed away, how I'm going to react. This person is sick, how I'm going to react to that.
You know what I'm saying? That's going to be beneficial to me, and it's going to be beneficial to that person. You know what I'm saying? Because when I sit there and be around friends and they going through something, I'm the worst person to come to when they grieving. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know the words, this and that. You know, that's just a flaw in me. Like, I don't even know how to sit there to respond to it. And my best thing is not to respond, because I don't
Just
want
to
to
be
respond.
there.
That's going to
Just hold
create
space.
another emotion in you that you may not know how to react to.
But you don't realize, Shem, that's one of the best things you could do, though. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. You're holding space for that person. Sometimes when a person is grieving, they don't. It's because guess what? Ain't nothing you gonna say gonna make it. Unless you finna go breathe life back into them. No.
Yeah,
Okay, then.
I don't think I can say anything.
So you doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
But I speak for them to understand that I'm here if you want to sit there and speak to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I will sit there and say the cliche terms of my condolences, I pray for you, this and that. Just for you to be aware that if you want to sit there and talk, or you want to sit there and release any type of emotions, that I'm here. But don't expect nothing back from me, because I'm not in your shoes. Mm-hmm. I can't relate what you're going through. I can't talk about what you're going through. You know what I'm saying? But I can be an ear. And this ear is going to be to do my best to understand. You know what I'm saying? Just to understand. Not to give you an impression that I know what you're going through. I don't know what you're going through. I'm not a mind reader. But I will sit there and listen to understand. You know what I'm saying? And at that time, right, that's actually giving me therapy, because in the future, if I ever go through it, I can look back at you like, man, how they breathe life into me and how they respond to their emotions. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm more emotionally intelligent now that I listen to this person understood. I listen to this person understood. I listen to this person and comprehend exactly what it means to go through losing somebody, because they're expressing themselves. Like what this person meant to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have family members around me, you know what I'm saying, like, passed away. You know what I'm saying? I rarely ever go to funerals. You know what I'm saying? Because my whole philosophy, my whole idea of someone passing, it's to celebrate life. Two things is guaranteed, is death and change. What this person meant to me, I'm going to celebrate it. I'm not going to mourn it, because we got expiration dates. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. We don't know what's going to happen. It's going to happen. But this is what this person meant to me. This person lived their life, did they thing. God made the decision they gonna leave, this and that. I'm gonna celebrate. This is what this person meant to me.
And that's why I just said to her and my other homegirl recently, like, I really I'm going to research the culture of Louisiana, you know, like New Orleans.
Man, because they celebrate that, man. They got a whole party. They got a whole parade when somebody died.
Hey, baby, they had a
Saints,
you know,
listen.
and that goes back into our culture, because that's Creole, that goes to West Africans, we celebrate death. You go back to Egyptians, they celebrate death. They dripping with gold. If y'all take time and listen to interviews with Busta Rhymes, when Busta Rhymes explain why I wear these gold chains, why this and that, this and that. This is my heritage. You know what I'm saying? We expressed ourselves of wealth. We expressed ourselves of happiness. Why I wear all this? Because this is my heritage. You know, so you can sit there and talk about jewelry, but it's other ways that we express ourselves. If it's tattoos, how we wear our clothes, this and that.
Yeah,
so it was a video I seen. Dog gave the blunt and put his man's is in the casket. He took the blunt and put the blunt that was on fire in his man's mouth. Everybody looked, oh, that's morally wrong, and all that, you know, we're going crazy. No, that's his time.
His first time.
You know what I'm saying? His emotions. How I'm going to celebrate my last time with my mans. You know what I'm saying? Y'all looking at one of weed, marijuana. Oh, he put this, and that. Like,
it's honorable.
Yeah,
right.
you know what I'm saying?
Him.
How y'all experience y'all with him? Because if it's a mother's a brother, this and that, it was more loving. This is how we sit there and celebrated good times with smoking this blunt. And right now, you done passed. This is I'm celebrating your life, and how we celebrate any other time. I'm putting this blunt, right? So, you know, when I'm reading the comments, they was like, the smoke was actually coming out the blunt when you put it in your mouth, right?
Like he hit it,
right? Like he hit it.
I know that Osa wanted to talk about some of her experience with grief and loss, So I wanted to give you space for that.
Okay.
To share your perspective.
Well, yeah, I wanted to just open it up outside of the realm of literal death. Again, we grieve from loss of connections or relationships. So it could be friendships ending. It could be the grief of dealing with a heartbreak or a lover. It could be the grief of a job. You know, we mourn different ways.
And you still
for
gonna go
different
through these
reasons
same steps
and go
of
through
grief.
the same exact stages. But truly knowing that, you know, you have to give yourself that time, like Sunshine mentioned, you know, take that time to feel your emotions, allow those emotions to release out of your body. Knowing that emotions is energy in motion. So energy is constantly moving. You have to release it. You have to let it go. Nice. Oh, nice. Okay, so yes. And even knowing, like, when you don't release those emotions, like, because it's energy, it'll find somewhere in your body to go implant. And this is what Sunshine just showed to me, is like where it can go in your body. So dealing with burdens and responsibilities, you'll feel the tension in your shoulders. Dealing with fear and repressed self-expression, you'll feel the tension in your neck, which is like that throat chakra blocking. Upper back deal with grief, sorrow, and sadness. The middle of your back is insecurity and powerlessness, which is again is dealing with the solar plexus, where you feel your strength and your confidence. The lower back, dealing with the sacral, is guilt, shame, and unworthiness. So that's dealing with again, sacral, your emotions, feeling ashamed or shaming yourself in any kind of way, you'll feel those blockages there. And then if you're feeling tension or pain in your stomach, that's the inability to process emotions. And a lot of times when we are grieving,
Say that
You brought
again.
that up because I
Say that
definitely
again.
wanted to touch on the blockages that not dealing with grief will create.
Wait a minute, and then so back up before you go there. There's also one called heartbreak of grief, and I know someone who just died of a heartbreak in January.
I believe
and it's
people
called
die heartbreak.
and it's so listen. It says heartbreak of grief is caused by increased blood pressure and risk of blood clots. The first thing that happened was she ended up with blood clots in her legs and in her lungs and stuff, and they started having to do surgery. And over a course of the last 3-4 years, she never recovered. And unfortunately, she was my friend, and we had stopped talking. And when she passed, the only thing I said is, I know she died from a heartbreak, and I hate that because that man didn't deserve that much of my friend.
I feel like that. I feel like that.
But
I
people
hear a
don't-
lot of
sometimes
women
people-
who die who had these heart problems. That's the first thing I think.
Because people don't know how to process the grief and the loss of love, friendships, relationships, jobs, money, a lot of things. You don't. Why you think people kill themselves and something? Because they can't handle it,
can't
and that's a
process the
form
grief.
of grief. That's a form of, they can't process it.
The loss.
My personal opinion is like society will tell you how you're supposed to handle grief, right?
Oh, come on, because I got another point. Come with it.
So, you know how we look at funerals, how we look at death. Society dictates and influences our thoughts about it. Versus we should have our own thoughts. Like when you speak of your mom had her own thoughts about death. She didn't follow the typical script of society telling you about death. For her to have her own inner peace. You know what I'm saying? As she's living. You know what I'm saying? I'm not about to be stressed. I'm not about to be irritated thinking about my death because I'm sitting there. Here, these people don't give a fuck because where they at right now, celebrate me, give me my flowers while I'm alive, right? So I understood exactly what your mom. I got the same opinion. When I pass, you can cremate me, throw me in a paper bag, throw me this and that. Have a party. I don't want no grieving because I don't go to funerals, and everybody know I don't do funerals. I might do repasts if it's a celebration. I don't do, we sit around all crying. Like, my emotional intelligence is like, I'm not about to sit there and be boo-hooing and all that other stuff. That ain't fixing shit. That ain't making nobody feel better. But if I could sit there and think about the person that passed and the good times we have, that's what's mending my hurt. That's what's mending my emotions, is actually thinking about the good times. Not that you didn't passed and gone and lost, because that's inevitable. That's going to happen. I have to accept it. So once I accept it, and my transition of accepting that is thinking about the good times, thinking about everything that you left when we was together that's still in me as I pursue on still living. You know what I'm saying? We had good times, the times that you didn't sit there and told me that I was wrong, times that you done gave me some games, same times we didn't have fun, same times that
whereas you done help me out with this and that. That's what I'm going to remember. That's what I'm going to use to grieve. So it's not like I'm being hard on myself, I'm down, and then when I'm around other people, I'm sucking their energy because I'm grieving, and I want you to come say something to me. I want you to be all caring for me. I want you to be all sad for me and all that other this and that. That's very selfish, my opinion personally. You know what I'm saying? If I'm grieving, put life in me.
Yes.
Don't come around, oh yeah, I know you going through all that. Nah, I don't want to hear none of that shit, son. I want to sit there and hear you bring life in me because I just lost a life that was close to me. Bring that life back.
You sound like me last Mother's Day. That's why I hear, because I was like, I don't need everything like, I know, you know, like, man, I know too. Now listen, now you come on, like, so guess what I did? I just cut my phone out. I sent my kids off. I got them fresh. And I stayed by myself. I enjoyed Mother's Day. I talked to her and one friend, and that was it. My other girl and I stayed. I let a couple people send me. But when I think the first one I got, I was like, yep, that's it, that'll do it. Listen, because last year what I realized though too is that I'm not gonna say I didn't feel, but I kind of just was like, oh, like this year it's a little more like, all right, like the dust is really settling now. Because so she left her house to my daughter. My daughter just had a baby, and now I have to clean the house out. So for the whole year, you couldn't go, if it was a piece of paper on the floor, leave that paper on the floor and close the door. Ain't nothing in there you need to touch. But now I keep hearing my mom say, what I tell you, it's stuff. If you don't get that stuff out of there so she can be comfortable in her home, that's not my, I'm here. Yeah. She like, my spirit here. But this is her home. And I'm like, Mama, you right. Listen, I better suck it up, buttercup. That's what 5 minutes to grieve. But you made a point about society and even social media. What I feel like, too, is society, especially with my African American men, do not allow our men to grieve properly because our men not even allowed to cry. And I feel like, why is that an issue with a man crying when he's human? Like, so if he human, he got tears, right? That means he need to cry. I've held space for men, and they've cried, and then I've had one, you know, you probably know, I feel like you needed that in that moment. That helped. Like crying, yeah, just like life said, don't make you strong, but it's a release. You need to get that out. You shouldn't have to be so strong. Like, and I'm not saying a man need to be just around here crying.
Nah, right. That's for anybody. But ain't no woman supposed to be around here crying all the time. Ain't no man supposed to be around
exactly.
all the time.
Like, but at the end of the day, I find so many men that I feel like the reason they can't even process their grief is because they can't cry. Because they're so conditioned to just be strong, and so they try to find another outlet. When, bro, just go on and cry, man. Go on by yourself.
As much as you need to.
Listen, it's
like, often you said the opposite word.
And
being strong.
And I mean
it's
an ugly
strong.
Cry.
Right.
Ugly cry, bro. I mean snot love.
Snot old that.
Listen, send your kids off.
You said the opposite word, being strong, right? So in order for a man to be strong, he got to go to the gym and work out. You talking about physically strong? He gonna work out. He doing sets, right?
No, I don't mean just physically.
No. I'm gonna come back right back to you. So we got to be physically strong, this and that, right? So between sets, we got to take breaks. We got to release. It's the same thing in life. Like, I'm so strong, I'm doing this and that. So the breaks is, if I have a loss, if I go through trials and tribulations, those are my breaks between my sets that I can breathe. I'm sweating, I'm coming down. I gotta let all that shit out because I gotta get back underneath the set again, right? So you just imagine if I'm working out and I don't have no break between my sets, they tell me do 10 sets. And then, okay, do your 10 sets again. I'm going to burn out. Versus if I have that minute and a half, and they tell you got that minute and a half break that you're going to, you know what I'm saying, get yourself together. You're going to talk to yourself. You're going to motivate yourself. You're going to sit there and put that encouragement back into yourself, this and that. Whereas when a man loses his mother, the man loses a friend, this and that, and he doesn't get that break between sets, and then he goes right back to being strong, he gonna burn himself out. And then when he burn himself out and explode, sometimes it's no coming back from that man. Just like that man will sit there and do sets every day
Yeah,
and
pull
no
out
break.
his shoulder.
It's no coming back. I done ripped tendons. I done ripped muscles. I done tore a rotator cuff. It's no coming back. You know what I'm saying? So to sit there, to have that ideal is like a man needs.
Well, that's where
To release
her
violence.
list of blockages come in, because you know I often talk about heart disease in women, but heart disease in men is very severe and high as well.
Especially in our
that
black
is-
men.
And that is due to
And our
not
black men.
I had this
handling,
conversation with heart disease.
emotion.
What's the creator of heart disease?
High blood pressure. Oh,
The creator of heart disease
Stress.
Stress.
If you ask me.
the creator of heart disease is salt and sugar intake.
oh, that too.
Is the number one reason for heart disease. The number one cause in death in the United
I don't
States
know,
is heart
because
disease.
there's a lot of people that really eat,
Just look it
eat
up.
very well, and they yet have
I'm
heart
finna-
disease.
I'm finna
It's
tell you.
like
Yo, the
Stress.
number one death in the United States is heart disease, and the number one cause for heart disease is salt and sugar. Right? We'll sit there and eat stuff, and they'll tell you that there's no sugar in it. Right? So what's the alternative to sugar?
Salt.
Salt, because it brings out the flavor in it. Right? So how do they trick us about salt? It's because now you read the labels, they don't say salt on the label. What do they say? Sodium. So when you drink Gatorade and all that, when your kids, you got sugar-free cereal, it doesn't say, it says no sugar, but then you have to look at the sodium intake. So
No,
now
I
we
don't-
have,
Well,
and
health
that
plays a
is
part.
true, and
A
that is
dietary
true,
will
but
sit
I
there and
know,
tell you
like,
that.
For me, I can only speak for myself, and I've always ate healthy, never overindulged in sugar, never indulged in salt.
did you look at the sodium intake?
High blood
Because they'll
pressure,
play
and
with the
it's
word.
mostly due to us having a stressful lifestyle. I had kids very young. My life has been very stressful, and just over a period of time, I've developed, situations in which stress heightens my blood pressure. Period. Like that, you living in that flight or fight zone at all times, because shit going on at all times. It's fear,
And
you know,
cancer,
it's-
and that's because
heart
cancer, and that's
disease
because
right there.
and that's
That's
because
heart disease right there.
and some tell me too that you don't want to let it out. You keep internalizing everything
And
instead of dealing with it.
that's where
Because
the
let me
heart
tell you
disease
what though,
come.
you have high blood pressure. I'm someone who had low blood pressure, but I'm someone when my body gets stressed out from 2013 up until let me see, maybe 5 years ago. Maybe 4 years ago, I finally stopped having what was called, I would have these stress fevers. So
What's a stress fever?
So I would get a fever. So, and it's funny because I started to realize, you know how they used to like stars, like they person was exhausted and they end up in the hospital a couple of weeks. That was basically their body was stressed and overworked. So what would happen is I would get a fever so high. My fever be like 103, 104. Like I'm in the hospital, they giving me all the antibiotics, all the strongest antibiotics, all this until listen, I didn't had so over a course of time, I didn't had them check me for lupus, HIV. They didn't check cancer. I done had a scope up and everything down, up every down anything, any hole you can think of. For it got to a point I have relationships with an infection and control disease, the chief, to where I went to another hospital one day and same thing. I'm going through it. I'm getting into it. The doctor's like, listen, I'm gonna tell you how to take care of me. They like, no. They this and it. So listen. So I finally tell their chief, call Doctor blah 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 blah. And when she called him, he said, oh, haha, my friend with the mysterious fever. So he laughed because I've been all the way to U of M. And even U of M said, ma'am, out of 100% of the patients getting here, 5% we'll never know what's wrong. It's stress. It's internalizing. And I've come to a point where I ain't internalizing nothing. But with that, I've learned to set boundaries. But boundaries have taken loss with more grief. So I'm learning to release and not internalize, because at the end of the day, I don't like being in the hospital and sitting there for 2 hours. I mean, in there for 2 weeks for stress and having them, picking and prying at me, and even the last chief. And I told her, I said, she got ready to walk out. I said, hey, ma'am, well, if I die, y'all can research me. She said, no, I think you're an alien. You'll outlive us all. First of all. That's not professional. You're not supposed to say stuff like
you just
that.
stressed out.
No,
Like,
that's
chill
real
out.
shit,
I'm
though.
mad.
That's
One of
real
those.
shit.
She like you one of those.
Like, I'm not an alien.
You gonna handle all that shit.
So I'm just saying, stress. You gotta stop internalizing. So I don't, and I'm agree that it could be your diet, but sometimes I think it's
In our
almost-
community-
No, I
Our
didn't
community
exclude from that. I'm
is
just saying the top
primarily
two
stress.
reason is that, and then it breaks down to stress, then it breaks down to depression, then it
Alcohol.
breaks down to, several other
Alcohol
reasons,
is
this
the
and that,
sugar.
right? Well, they said that alcohol is a spirit, right? And then
I
some
said
people,
it's the sugar. It's the sugar.
well, you can drink
A lot of
alcohol
sugar.
that has
A
less
lot of
sugar.
sugar.
You can have alcohol that has less sugar,
People
like
don't choose
tequila.
that.
So
They don't
if
choose
tequila
that
has
tequila.
less sugar, right, is when you
we
drink
drinking?
it and how
What
you
we
behave
drinking?
after drinking it will raise your blood pressure.
Yeah.
So there's all different scenarios what causes high blood pressure. Like, I did not eliminate that. Oh, it's only salt and sugar. Those are the top two reasons because that is our behavior pattern of our intake is salt and sugar. And then we have the false impression because there's no sugar, then it means no salt. No, because they changed the label from salt to sodium. And they don't look at sodium as being salt and think it's healthy. No.
Right.
Then then certain foods that we eat, just because it doesn't say sugar, but it'll say glucose. That's another word for sugar. So you have to look at all of that. And when doctors are talking to you, and doctors sit there and tell you something, it's not fact. It's their opinion. Everything a doctor say is their opinion.
It's theory, which is
It's
why,
theory.
and that's why I always know that when I've been in the hospital and they be running around crazy, I said because your whole job is based on you come up with a theory
With an
and then
educational guess.
and you
Prove
gonna
it
go
right.
prove
Yeah,
it, and
that's
then
right.
and then you gonna come give me some medicine.
That's
But
why they
guess
go to
what?
school to practice.
Yeah,
medicine.
practice.
You
But
prove
guess
it
what?
right.
And guess what happens though? You run it to me, and I'm like, no. Let me tell you what we're
I'm
gonna do.
using my
You're
common
gonna
sense.
you're gonna give me these fluids. I need this for so many days,
I'm tired.
and after this,
Look,
you
I'm
gonna
tired
wean me
and I'm
off.
stressed out.
Yeah, and then this is what, and they be looking at me
I need
like,
some rest.
because I had one doctor, he just kept coming, and he couldn't even speak good English. He could talk HIV. Man, I hit the button. I told him, come get this motherfucker. Because he said
If I
HIV
go
one
outside
time.
this
Give
goddamn
me,
head.
first of all, give me a test. Because, nigga,
Yeah.
that motherfucker, that ain't what it is. And I said, and get this motherfucker out of my room. Don't bring him back in here not another time. Sir, I don't have that shit, and you not finna speak life on that either. Have a good day. The fuck?
It's like when we listen. Go ahead.
It's time to close, y'all. Sorry, but before we close, I wanted to just touch on ways to cope or deal with grief. And what I found to work for not only myself and my loved ones, but for my clients as well. For one, sitting in meditation, allowing yourself to just sit with that mindfulness, sitting with your thoughts, allowing yourself to process it, to feel it, does wonders with dealing with grief. Also, as being like a spiritualist, a medium, necromancer, whatever title you want to put on it, to connect with the spirit of the transition loved one, that brings so much peace. For me to just be able to sit in that space and help other people to connect to their loved one and then develop that relationship where they could talk to them themselves, that helps so much. It helped me even step into my journey, but I've seen it help hundreds of people here in the Metro Detroit area. So to know that the person doesn't leave you, your loved one is still with you, to still have that conversation with them, to trust that when they come and visit you in your dreams, you're not dreaming about it, you're literally getting a visitation by them. They come into you letting you know that they want to talk to you, so just being open to the spirits, it's something to celebrate, it's something to still deal with, to still talk to still feel. Don't shut yourself out, and again, connect with community. If you feel led to be around other people who are dealing with the same thing, that helps to bring a lot of peace as well.
So that kind of ties into the 3 C's. Choose what's best for you, meaning what's best for you from that point on. Connect with others. Don't isolate yourself. Okay. And communicate. Put your needs out there and allow yourself, because it's going to come with some vulnerability, so that people can know exactly what you
4 C's: communicate and comprehend.
Oh, baby, but see, that's not that.
And I got one last
Woo,
thought.
woo.
Let me just share my one last thought, please.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we talk like this, Christians think that it's not for them, right? Like we talked
What's
about
that for them?
Being in
Altar
touch with
workers, talking to spirits.
our lost loved ones and things like that. But this was part of our church at some point. I just feel so disconnected sometimes because where our church has come these days is just not where it started.
Well,
right.
it's not necessarily a part of our church, but I think it's part of our heritage. And what I realize is that
our heritage, which
I'm still, and I grew up Baptist, strong. My family is strong in the Baptist church. And don't get me wrong, I'm dating a guy right now. He comes from family strong Baptist, and he has something like he talks about fifth dimension. But I was just getting ready to do a cord cut and release at his house, and he like, no, you trying to put your beliefs off me? You got to take that home. And I'm like, but wait a minute, bro. Like I'm trying to but my thing is people don't understand because that's the other thing with the social media because I feel like always trying to be funny by speak to the spirits because I did a veil opening and I know a lot of people with the mushroom stuff, so I only done it for spiritual purposes. And what I came to find is that when I did my veil opening, that I honestly I can and it's something that I run from, that I can communicate. A lot of spirits can visit me. My mother let me know that she didn't pass over peacefully. I have all type of stuff happen.
To have a good time.
And I'm trying to be receptive and hear, and they be visiting, or like I have the gift of being able to read teacups, and we have a friend that she likes to upload things like she just, and I keep refusing to look in the group chat, but she just uploaded a glass and she like, I see a face. But I've had, our friend she's learning the herbs. She's an herbalist.
Just discovering those spiritual gifts.
And she accidentally sent me 2 teacups. And when I looked in the teacups, all of a sudden I seen one, it was different faces. Then the other one, it had names. Only to realize that she accidentally sent me the cup, but the messages were for me. They were a personalized message from my daughter's father who had passed over. Oh, well, and nonetheless, when it all settled down.
Yeah, we got to have another topic on this. I've been wanting to touch on this because I know so many women who has lost like widowers and men who has lost their wives. And so this is a really, people lose siblings, people lose parents. This is a huge thing that we should have a recurring discussion on.
Absolutely.
Maybe twice a year. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead and close us out, Elsa.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for tapping into Tapped In Talk Radio. Peace and love. Signing out.
Peace out.
Good night and good day.
You are now tuned in to 7 Miles.